a lot of people, I have had a few people ask, kind of obviously, it's mixed, sending mixed signals, right, for the sports. For those who don't know, Lucas Oil Corporation, the company, owns and operates the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series.
Right.
They own a whole lot of other motorsports entities over
Lucas
the years.
Oil Speedway.
They own Lucas Oil Speedway out in Missouri, the dirt track, Wheatland, Missouri, where the Show Me is. They used to own a off-road truck series. They just in a lot of boat series, all that stuff. Sponsored a lot of different stuff. They've been in the motorsports realm for a long time. Part of their dirt track portfolio, along with the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series and Lucas Oil Speedway, was the MLRA, Midwest Late Model Racing Association, I believe that's it. Which has been around for 36 years.
Yeah,
I think they bought it in 2012 and have operated it since then. It operated kind of as with Lucas Oil Speedway and Wheatland as its home base. The majority, had the most races. Well, they announced Monday, that they were dissolving, basically shutting down the series to focus on shutting down the MLRA series to focus on the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series, their national tour, and Lucas Oil Speedway, and raises a lot of concerns because there has been this fear, or rumor, fear, whatever you want to call it, that Lucas Oil could be pulling out. Right, a lot of changes happened. Forrest Lucas, the founder of Lucas Oil and the patriarch of the family, is getting older, and
his son kind of take over operations.
It's kind of it's what you hear, and it's like you don't really know what his plans are and what the company might do as Forrest.
You might see a little different value in dirt racing than his father
in
did.
Motorsports in general. They have pulled out of the off-road trucks. They have pulled out of the power boats. They've pulled out of a lot of things, and there was always this fear that dirt late model racing could be next. Obviously, they have, with all the money they're starting to put in, they have been every year, it feels like, increasing points funds and payouts and everything, and loyalty programs for the Lucas Oil Series. It's looked like the late model series was pretty safe. Obviously, we know Flow has a large hand in that too as their new streaming partner.
Well, isn't also Flow now the presented by Flow Racing?
But then after just 2 weeks ago, at Eldora, or 3 weeks ago, however it was, that they announced this, more money in the points fund and more higher paying races and all this. Okay, well, everything's good. Well, then we kind of find out they're pulling the plug on the
all of a sudden.
series.
We were driving home from Cherokee, and I read it to you, and you're like, "What?"
Yeah, well, it just took me a while, not even a minute. Like the rest of the drive home, I'm trying to process that yesterday. Like what? Because it's like what does it mean for the sport if one of the most influential, not just sponsors, they're not a sponsor, they are an organization within.
Well, they
the
actually
sport.
own the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series. They still own the Lucas Oil
Speedway.
Well, also the
MLRA.
Yeah. They're just disbanding it. Yeah. Like we're shutting this down. We're not pulling away our sponsorship. We own it. We're shutting it down.
And they also own MAV TV, which is a whole motorsports network that then became part of Flow, or the races anyway were on Flow. Like it's just like that they're investing in motorsports, right? And it seems like everything. Okay, they must be doing well. They're staying in dirt racing while pulling out of other things, and things must be going well. That's a positive sign for the sport. Well, then for them just all of a sudden pull the plug on MLRA is like, okay, what does that mean for the rest of us, right? Like, and I don't know. It is concerning. And I've had people, hey, why are they doing that? It's been, there's a lot of us within the sport are like, what's going on, right? And I don't know is the answer.
To me, the easy answer, this is just me, outsider looking in, is they don't see as much value in that series. Costs money to operate.
Yes.
And they don't see the value in spending that money on operating that particular series.
Yeah. And to be fair, it has declined, the series. It had two guys, I think both just the Simpsons.
Yeah,
Chad and Chris Simpson were the only two to run the whole thing this year. Didn't have a ton of races. 19. It feels like it is on I'm not saying there are certainly others that are declined more over the years, but it hasn't been in the forefront and has kind of taken a back seat. While other regional deals I feel like our series have moved forward. And I feel like for it to survive as a regional series and, thrive as a regional series, probably they were going to have to invest more time and money into it. And they essentially said, why do that?
Just shut it down.
And we'll focus on the Lucas Oil Series. I understand that from a business perspective. But bottom. You got to look at the bottom line and what makes sense. Does it make sense to spend money on something that isn't, return on your investment? Is there an ROI there? Probably not much. I think regional series should be able to make money, right? Like if you're doing it correctly,
or at least not cost
right.
Money to
but
operate.
Is the return that to make it worth it there? And they clearly said no. The problem is, what does that mean for the future of the sport? Like, it's not just okay, never mind, we won't do that anymore, and we'll focus on this and we'll be fine. Yeah, initially, that might be fine, but that's what are all those drivers who've been running that series and the guys in the future who are going to run that series and use it to...
150 competitors this year in 2024 ran an event.
And so what about, guys who saw that as their path to eventually becoming, Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series competitors, right? I think it's short-sighted, and I don't see how that's not going to impact the sport in the future. And, those of us who work in this sport, especially at the regional level, whether it's, on the promotion side, on the race team side, race tracks, we like to think that the people who are at the highest level, and, we're talking about the folks at World Racing Group and Dirt Vision and World Outlaws, the folks at Lucas Oil Series, the folks at Flow Racing, I would say they're setting the tone, the path forward. And we'd like to think that they have the best interest of the sport overall and the health of the sport in mind. This does not feel like, is not reassuring.
Well, it feels like it furthers that gap between the, grassroots level, the lower level, and the, national higher level of dirt racing, right? We're all of us, the last couple of years, we've dumped a lot of money into this top level of the sport, the Lucas Oil Series, and I know it's a totally different organization, but World Outlaws, Flow, like there's just so much money at the top, but we're having to shut down, not even the bottom, but the middle level here, the middle ground with the MLRA, we're having to shut that down, right? Because we're not putting money there. So you lose. I mean, I get it. It's great right now because, the national level, big events, big crowds, thriving. Yep. So we're going to put money there and keep that thriving. Well, you're going to get it so separated from the lower level, the grassroots, that you're going to lose that connection.
There's no path for, unless you're, at some point, you not need to be a billionaire, but, certainly you got to be a multimillionaire at this point to have a path to racing nationally. Not necessarily. I mean, you could be really good at the local level and hit the right, find the right connections, and the car owner finds you and all, but ultimately it's getting so expensive. Right. I mean, I'll tell you what it is, and I hate to say it, but it looks a lot like NASCAR. It's starting to look a lot like NASCAR, disconnected from its grassroots, base, right? And its grassroots, where it came from, and it's growing into something that's going to be so different from what it was that a lot of people aren't going to recognize it and aren't going to feel like they're part of it. Yeah. And that is something that I know, any move that we make for our series, I really, really take into consideration what it does. I specifically, not to call him out or use him, not that he gets any kind of favoritism or any kind of negative, but I think of what that means for Dalton Cook, right? Or a Matt Dooley, or a Cade Loudy, right? If the things that we do,
those are all three that you just named weekly
local regional racers, right? Like, and can they afford? Maybe they can't afford to race with us every week and follow our series, but can they still compete with us, right? Because the moment they can't, we'll lose them, right? And they're going to go run crate, or they're going to go run, something else, or some might just quit, right? And I think that's dangerous. Is you're making it where those guys, they're not going to, the larger that gap gets between the grassroots level and the top level, they're going to be disconnected from it. They're not going to want to be part of it, and our sport's going to stop growing.
Well, and then all of a sudden, everybody knows it's not. There's no way for talent to make it anymore. Yes. There's no path for talent.
Severely limited when you're putting that barrier to, essentially a barrier to entry. I know they're not doing it on purpose, but that's what it feels like. Is they're not helping to, like that. I've said from the beginning when we started the Hunt the Front series, our goal was to create a series that guys could use to take the next step to run a national tour. Start with us and get experience and build and grow, and then eventually go on to run a national tour. Or guys like, that are kind of on the downhill side, and as they're, finding a place as they, retire. And there's guys that just don't want to go run a national tour because of the toll it takes, as we talked about. And I feel like that's important in every region. And Lucas Oil just basically said they're not worried about that. Is the way I take that. I mean, I don't think there's any other, and to some degree, flow racing is backing that decision. You know, or that I am now worried about our path forward as a sport. That we're not going to, we're no longer worried about sustainability.
There you go. That's the word I was about to use. We actually used it last week talking about the XR stuff. We got to have sustainability in our sport, and then we're getting a little top heavy up here at the top.
Absolutely.
There's concern, just our perspective, right?
Regional racing can't die. I mean, if it does, it won't be like instantaneous, but eventually it's going to, the national level will suffer too. It'll be a totally different sport. And, you know, I hate to tell y'all, you know, that thing is never going to be NASCAR. It's, you know, that mass audience. We're never going to reach a mass audience where we're not reliant on the participants that, you know, race locally every week to you know,
if you lose them, you don't have anything else to rely on.
Nope. There's no mass audience there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's disappointing. I don't know the ins and outs of it. Right. But when you see that, it makes you wonder when it's like, well, we just put a bunch of money at the top end, but we're disbanding this down here. That was my, like, how does that work? You know,
he just signed a deal with Kyle Busch to put him in a midget at the Chili Bowl, and I guarantee you whatever they're paying him, they're not, you know, I don't know, I shouldn't go there, but, you know, I as a dirt late model participant fan, someone, you know,
there went the budget for that series to go be on.
Yeah, that's exactly what
to go be on his Chili Bowl, right?
And good, you know, hey, I get it, ROI, right? But it's not. There's some, you know, there's those of us in the sport who know that it's not all about ROI. It's about
immediate.
It's about keeping the sport thriving and being sustainable for the future.